What's up, guys? Connor here, and today I'm doing a new video, but this time it's a little out of the typical realm of what I usually do, which is like book reviews and stuff of that nature. I've really been enjoying the character analysis stuff, but I think it's more about time that I should sort of breach into a little new territory about the setting of Warhammer in general. And the question being, has Warhammer entered into a new age? So right off the bat, you could just be asking, Connor, what does that even mean? What does that mean? We're still in 40K. We're in the 40, I think we're in the 43rd now, not even the 42nd millennium. So Connor, what does that mean? A new setting. Everything's the same. The whole point of Warhammer is that everything will always be the same and stagnation. Yes. You're right. See, that I don't disagree with. But what I'm more tangentially asking is, have we kind of lost the definition of the Long War? And if you're confused about what I mean about that, the Long War is how veterans of the Horus Heresy would refer to their crusade against the Imperium. So obviously, traitor Marines have beef with the Imperium. That's pretty self-explanatory. But have their motives dramatically changed from what they used to be, right? That would be the question. That's obviously, of course they have. But then there's another question of, has it really changed all that much? And I would like to pose that question and maybe give my own answers. So obviously, this has been on my mind for a couple days, and it was probably because I've just been staring at this, Renegades of the Long War. And I got to thinking, what is the point for Chaos to keep fighting the Imperium? And Chaos is not in the objective term of the overall encompassing entity of 4 Chaos Gods and all these Eldritch horrors coming to kill humanity and corrupt and taint, but more about the Chaos Marine perspective. What is the point to keep fighting? So if reading the Heresy is kind of like reading Game of Thrones or something of that nature, where we get to see this ginormous empire and we see in its glory, although I would argue that during the Heresy, including Horus Rising, when we're kind of still in 30K, where the Imperium of Man isn't really in its golden age. It's already showing signs of it kind of going on that downward spiral. But we get to see this, not utopia, because it's obviously not a utopia, it's awful, but we get to see the amalgamation of the Emperor's manifestations for humanity's future. We see Terra in its magnificence. We see Horus. We see the Primarchs dictate their will. We see the Space Marines. We see all that which is the potential that humanity could rise to. And it's interesting and it's fun, but then we see the downward slope, the corruption of Horus, of Fulcrum, and then the death of Ferrus Manus. There's a lot going on in this whole series, not to mention the Siege of Terra, where more stuff is happening, of course. But the overall motivation for the traitors was to, not sit idly by while the Emperor achieves godhood, which was the vision shown to Horus by the Chaos Gods, and instead be cast away when the Emperor achieves his dream, and there's no longer a need for a warrior caste like, say, the Space Marines. So obviously they revolt and follow Horus because it is their dictate as Astartes to rule humanity. They are the upper echelon of humanity, the next step, and they have the divine right given to them by the gods of this materium to enact their will on said materium. And that starts as their motivation, right? We have all these characters under Horus, not just Space Marines, mind you, Mechanica members, Legio Titanicus. We have knights swearing fealty to Horus. Horus does a good job of swindling more than a good portion of the Imperium to his cause, not to mention demonic allies and, the likes. Like, we get to see this huge motivation that's obviously plain and simple if you read the books, and you don't even need to read the books to understand their motivations to fight, because they don't believe in the Emperor anymore. They believe in their own superior, existence, because they are the next step of human evolution, according to them. But now, as we flash forward past 30K, the heresy's over. it's now almost mythologized in universe, seeing as how on the loyalist sides, there's very few people who even lived through it, say Primarchs and maybe, Belisarius Cawl and that one dreadnought who's a space wolf, I don't remember his name, Bjorn maybe. There's very few and far in between loyalists who were present and even can understand the impact that the heresy had on everything going forward. Not just humanity as a whole, but the universe and how, chaos, the great Terran reality, Necron's awakening, Tyranids coming to the known universe, Ghazghkull rising up as the prophet of Gork and Mork. These things have just, downward spiral since humanity decided to just, do a boogie woogie and just decide to swear to space Satan 4 times over. You know what I'm saying? But as we kind of go past even that and go into current 40K as a whole, is the Long War still really a war anymore? Because let's say, like, when I've read Fabius Bile and I've read even this, even though this isn't, Renegades of the Long War isn't necessarily in current modern day 40K times, there's still a good chunk of information about how war bands operate. And I'm going to give you, honestly, war bands and most of Chaos is just more focused on infighting and achieving their own glory against the Imperium, not because of some false emperor, but because they've just been they're being hunted down by the Imperium. So it just props up the question, is the Long War even really what it used to be, or has the definition changed? And obviously I'd say yes, because the majority of war bands do their own thing. They only fight so they could survive, gain power, achieve demonhood, and really that's it. Maybe, oh yeah, sure, loot the Imperium for gene seed, of course, munitions, armor, and weaponry, and scavenge what they can. Sure, that's typical Chaos, raiding party nonsense. This happens, of course, but there is no overall motivation anymore for, the heresy was a main factor and driving force for the Imperium. The Black Legion, sure, it could be rising up to the occasion, which is still carrying on Horus's dream, just rephrased differently, that it's their divine right since they're Astartes and they will utilize the dark gods but won't be slaves to them, such and such. But it's just an interesting question, because when you read these newer books like there was a Renegades book called Lords of Excess. I didn't read it, but that would be a good place to start, because we're getting a modern day equivalent of a war band, and we're going to see the inside of how they work. It's interesting stuff. Even the Night Lords Omnibus, when I'm reading with Talos's thought processes and such, most war bands don't view this overarching ambition of we must enact vengeance upon the Imperium because it's our divine right. It's just, we will do this because now it's just, we just have to survive. Now we just have to survive. So is it, the long story short, I don't want to keep stretching it, is the Long War even a long war anymore? And I'd say no. Even from the Black Legion perspective, I wouldn't necessarily call it the Long War anymore. And this is coming from someone who's like I love Chaos. Like, I'm a big Chaos enjoyer. But I wouldn't say this is, how I would describe is, I wouldn't be the Long War anymore. There's no, they want to tear down Terra, sure, but it's not for this overarching ambition anymore. Some legions do have that. The Lords of Silence, for example, still do hold true to the values of the Long War. They follow Mortarion, however you want to say it. Someone made fun of me for my pronunciation, but that's because I heard a British guy say it and it sounded really cool, so I kind of went with it because, it sounded real intellectual, if you will. But, they follow Mortarion, and they still do, the god, his will, and Horus's, not his overall arching plan, which was, again, throw down the Emperor and all that stuff, but more, now they serve Mortarion and Nurgle, but they still hold true to some of the beliefs that the Imperium is not the best bet for humanity. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a fun little, philosophical question, I wanted to pose to you guys. So, let me know if you think the Long War is still going on, if you think it's changed, and how Chaos itself has sort of been changing as the setting keeps going on and on. I'm really curious as to how you guys would what opinions you guys have on this. But other than that, guys, that's the video. Thank you so much. If you liked the video, I appreciate it. And that's it. I am out of here.